Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Plaza Hotel shimmered under the glow of 1,000 tiny lights. White roses cascaded from crystal vases on every table, their petals so perfect they looked almost artificial. The air hummed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smooth jazz quartet playing in the corner. Everything about this wedding screamed wealth, elegance, and careful planning. Everything except Cassie Morgan, who was currently gripping the edge of the bar like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She hadn't meant to drink this much. She really hadn't. But when your best friend since kindergarten marries into one of the richest families in the city, and you're forced to wear a dress that costs more than your rent, and you have to smile through speeches about true love when your own boyfriend just dumped you via text 3 days ago, well, champagne starts looking like a very reasonable coping mechanism. Cassie squinted at the bartender, a young man with perfectly slicked hair who looked like he'd never had a bad day in his life. "Another glass of champagne, please." Her words came out slightly slurred, and she winced at the sound of her own voice. "Ma'am, are you sure?" The bartender's smile was polite but concerned. "You've had quite a few already. I'm a bridesmaid. It's practically my job to drink." She waved her hand dismissively, nearly knocking over an empty glass. "Besides, I have to toast the happy couple at least 17 more times tonight. That's the rule." The bartender hesitated, then poured her another glass. Cassie took it gratefully and turned to survey the reception. Across the room, her best friend Melissa looked radiant in her ivory gown, laughing at something her new husband said. They looked perfect together. Disgustingly perfect. Like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled, "How to Make Everyone Else Feel Inadequate." Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes. "Stop it," she muttered to herself. "You're happy for her. You're thrilled for her. You're not at all bitter that she found her soulmate while you can't even keep a guy interested for more than 6 months. Talking to yourself is usually a sign you've had enough to drink." Cassie jumped, nearly spilling champagne down the front of her lavender bridesmaid dress. She turned to find a man standing beside her at the bar, and for a moment, her alcohol-fogged brain struggled to process what she was seeing. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead in a way that looked effortlessly elegant. His suit was obviously custom-made, fitting his broad shoulders perfectly, and his eyes were a striking shade of gray that seemed to see right through her. "And I suppose you're an expert on drinking?" Cassie shot back, trying to sound defensive but mostly sounding drunk. The corner of his mouth twitched. "I've had my moments." He gestured to the bartender, who immediately snapped to attention in a way he definitely hadn't for Cassie. "Whiskey. Neat. And maybe some water for the lady." "I don't need water," Cassie protested. "I need more champagne, and possibly a time machine, or a new life, one of those." The man accepted his drink and turned to face her fully, leaning against the bar, with an ease that suggested he was completely comfortable in this world of wealth and elegance. "Rough night?" Cassie let out a laugh that was perhaps a bit too loud. "Oh, you have no idea." She took another sip of champagne, ignoring the water the bartender had placed in front of her. "Let me paint you a picture. My best friend just married a man whose family owns half the real estate in the city. I'm wearing a dress that costs more than my car. I had to smile through a ceremony where they released doves, actual doves, and I'm pretty sure one of them pooped on my shoulder. And to top it all off, my boyfriend dumped me 3 days ago because, and I quote, "I'm not ambitious enough for his life trajectory." The stranger's eyebrows rose slightly. "That does sound rough." "Oh, I'm not done." Cassie felt the words tumbling out now, unstoppable. "I'm 28 years old. I work as a graphic designer for a company that makes bathroom fixtures. I live in an apartment where I can hear my neighbor's entire phone conversations through the walls, and I just realized that the most exciting thing that happened to me this month was finding a good parking spot at the grocery store. The man took a sip of his whiskey, his gray eyes never leaving her face. And telling all this to a complete stranger at a wedding seems like a good idea? Cassie waved her champagne glass dramatically. You're here, aren't you? And you asked. Besides, strangers are the best people to confess to. You'll never see me again after tonight, so who cares? I can tell you anything. I could tell you that I once stole a candy bar when I was 7 and felt guilty about it for years. I could tell you that I'm secretly terrified I'll end up alone with 17 cats. I could tell you that sometimes I look at my life and wonder if I made all the wrong choices. The man set his glass down carefully. That's a lot to unpack. You have no idea. Cassie felt tears threatening again and blinked them back furiously. God, I'm a mess. I'm sorry. You probably came over here for a peaceful drink, and instead, you got a drunk bridesmaid having an existential crisis. I've seen worse, he said, and there was something almost gentle in his tone. Cassie studied him through her champagne haze. You're too well dressed to be a regular guest. Let me guess, you're related to the groom's family. Some cousin or business associate? Something like that. Well, Mr. Something Like That, welcome to the most expensive display of true love money can buy. Cassie gestured broadly at the ballroom. See that ice sculpture? That's a swan. It cost more than my monthly salary. See those centerpieces? Each one has flowers flown in from 3 different continents. And that band? They played at the Grammys last year. You seem to have strong feelings about this wedding. I have strong feelings about a lot of things right now. Cassie finished her champagne and immediately reached for another glass that had somehow appeared on the bar. I have feelings about the fact that love seems to come so easily to some people and not to others. I have feelings about the fact that I spent 6 months planning this wedding with Melissa, and the whole time I was pretending to be excited while secretly feeling like a failure. I have feelings about the fact that I'm standing here in a dress that makes me look like a lavender cupcake, confessing my deepest insecurities to a stranger who probably thinks I'm completely pathetic. I don't think you're pathetic. Cassie looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift in her chest. There was no judgment in his eyes, no pity, just a kind of quiet understanding that made her want to tell him even more. You know what the worst part is? She said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. I'm not even sure I believe in love anymore. Not the kind they talk about in movies, anyway. Not the kind where someone looks at you and just knows you're the one. I think that's all fairy tale nonsense designed to sell greeting cards and movie tickets. That's a pretty cynical view. It's a realistic view. Cassie felt herself swaying slightly and gripped the bar again. Love is just brain chemistry and timing. You meet someone when you're both available and interested. You date for a while, and if you're lucky, you don't annoy each other enough to break up. That's it. That's the great mystery of human romance. The stranger tilted his head, studying her with those penetrating gray eyes. So if love is just chemistry and timing, what are you doing at a wedding celebrating it? Obligation, friendship, free cake. Cassie listed them off on her fingers, nearly losing her balance in the process. And because Melissa is my best friend, and even though I think this whole thing is an elaborate exercise in showing off wealth, I love her enough to put on this ridiculous dress and pretend that everything is magical and perfect. That's actually pretty loving for someone who doesn't believe in love. Cassie blinked at him, thrown off by the observation. I didn't say I don't believe in caring about people. I said I don't believe in fairy tale romance. There's a difference, is there? Of course there is. Caring about someone is real. It's choosing to be there for them, even when it's inconvenient. It's knowing all their flaws and staying anyway. But that's not the same as this. She gestured at the ballroom again, at the flowers and the lights and the dancing couples. This is performance. This is convincing yourself and everyone else that you've found something magical, when really you've just found someone you're willing to tolerate for the foreseeable future. The man's lips curved into a small smile. You really are drunk. I really am, Cassie agreed cheerfully. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. Drunk words are sober thoughts, right? Isn't that what they say? Something like that. Cassie felt emboldened by the alcohol and the stranger's attention. You want to know what else I think? I think expensive weddings are just a way for people to avoid dealing with the actual, hard work of being in a relationship. They spend all this time and money planning one perfect day, and then they're surprised when real life doesn't live up to the fantasy. Marriage isn't about doves and ice sculptures. It's about figuring out who takes out the trash and what to do when someone snores, and how to forgive each other when you inevitably disappoint each other. The stranger took another sip of his whiskey. You've given this a lot of thought. I've had a lot of champagne. But yes, I've thought about it. Cassie felt herself getting worked up now. All the emotions she'd been pushing down for weeks bubbling to the surface. I've watched Melissa plan this wedding for 18 months. 18 months of agonizing over place settings and invitation fonts, and whether the napkins should be ivory or cream. And the whole time I kept thinking, this isn't what matters. What matters is whether they'll still like each other when one of them gets sick, or loses their job, or goes through a crisis. What matters is whether they can handle the boring, mundane, unglamorous reality of being with another person day after day. The stranger's expression had shifted to something Cassie couldn't quite read. Sounds like you're speaking from experience. My ex and I dated for 2 years. Cassie felt the familiar ache in her chest, dulled slightly by alcohol but still there. We were fine when everything was easy. But the moment things got complicated, the moment I needed him to be there for me in a real way, he decided I wasn't worth the effort. Apparently, I wasn't ambitious enough. Apparently, my life trajectory wasn't aligned with his goals. She made air quotes with her fingers, nearly sloshing champagne on herself, as if life is something you can just plan out like a business strategy. I'm sorry that happened to you. Don't be. It taught me something important. Cassie straightened up, trying to look dignified, and probably failing spectacularly. It taught me that people will always disappoint you if you expect too much from them. Better to just lower your expectations and be pleasantly surprised when someone doesn't completely let you down. That's a sad way to live. It's a safe way to live, Cassie corrected. No expectations, no disappointment. Simple. The stranger set his glass down and turned to face her fully. His gray eyes were intense now, focused entirely on her in a way that made her heart skip despite the alcohol. Can I tell you what I think? Cassie felt suddenly nervous under his gaze, but tried to play it off. Sure. Everyone else has been giving me advice tonight. Might as well hear it from a stranger, too. I think you're scared. The words hit Cassie like cold water. Excuse me. You're scared of being hurt again, so you're pretending you don't believe in love. You're wrapping yourself in cynicism like it's armor, but really, you're just protecting yourself from feeling vulnerable. Cassie felt anger flash through her, hot and sharp. You don't know anything about me. I know you're standing here at your best friend's wedding, drunk and alone, telling a stranger that love is just chemistry and timing. I know you're trying very hard to convince yourself that you don't care about any of this. But if you really didn't care, you wouldn't be this upset about it. I'm not upset. Cassie's voice came out higher than she intended. I'm just realistic. You're hurt, he said simply. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being hurt doesn't make you weak or naive. It just makes you human. Cassie felt tears burning in her eyes again, and this time she couldn't blink them away. She looked down at her champagne glass, watching the bubbles rise to the surface. Why are you being so nice to me? I'm just some drunk girl having a breakdown at a wedding. Maybe I understand what it's like to feel out of place. The stranger's voice was softer now. Maybe I know what it's like to watch everyone else seem happy and wonder what's wrong with you, that you can't figure it out. Cassie looked up at him, surprised. You don't seem like someone who has trouble figuring things out. Appearances can be deceiving. They stood in silence for a moment, the party swirling around them. Cassie felt the alcohol making everything slightly fuzzy around the edges, but somehow this conversation felt sharp and real in a way nothing else had all night. I don't even know your name, she said finally. Does it matter? I just poured my heart out to you. I think I should at least know who witnessed my complete emotional breakdown. The stranger smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Fair enough. I'm James. Cassie. She extended her hand, then realized how formal that seemed, and dropped it. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. I'm apparently incapable of normal human interaction tonight. I think you're doing fine. I told you I might end up alone with 17 cats. That's not fine. That's concerning. James laughed, a real laugh that made something warm bloom in Cassie's chest. Maybe you'll only end up with 16 cats. That's practically normal. Cassie found herself laughing, too, and it felt good, like releasing pressure that had been building for days. God, I'm a disaster. I'm the worst bridesmaid ever. I'm supposed to be supporting Melissa and being happy for her, and instead I'm over here having a therapy session with a stranger at the bar. I'm sure she wouldn't want you to be miserable. She wouldn't. Melissa's amazing. She's the kindest person I know. Cassie felt a rush of affection for her friend, mixed with guilt. She deserves this. She deserves all of this happiness. I'm just being selfish. You're not being selfish, James said firmly. You're being honest about your feelings. That's different. Cassie shook her head, the movement making the room spin slightly. I should be better than this. I should be able to just be happy for her without making it about me. You can be happy for her and still acknowledge your own pain. The two things aren't mutually exclusive. When did you become so wise? Cassie squinted at him. Are you some kind of life coach? Secret therapist? Wedding philosopher? Just someone who's made enough mistakes to recognize them in other people. That's cryptic and intriguing. Cassie leaned against the bar, trying to focus on his face. Tell me your mistakes, James. Fair's fair. I told you mine. He hesitated, and Cassie could see something shift in his expression. My biggest mistake was thinking that success and happiness were the same thing. I spent years building something, achieving things, checking boxes on some invisible list of accomplishments. And then I looked up one day and realized I had everything I thought I wanted and still felt empty. That's actually really sad. It is. James picked up his whiskey glass, swirled the amber liquid thoughtfully. I thought if I just worked hard enough, made enough money, proved myself enough, then everything else would fall into place. Relationships, happiness, meaning. But it doesn't work that way. Cassie felt something click in her mind, a recognition of shared experience. My ex used to talk about life trajectory, about goals and ambitions and 5-year plans. He made me feel like loving someone wasn't enough, like I had to be constantly achieving and improving and becoming more to be worthy of love. That's not love. That's a business arrangement. That's what I tried to tell him. But he made me feel like I was the one who didn't understand, like I was settling for mediocrity by just wanting something simple and real. Simple and real are underrated, James said, his gray eyes meeting hers. Some of the best things in life are simple. They just don't look impressive on paper. Cassie felt tears threatening again, But this time they were different. Not tears of self-pity or bitterness, but something closer to recognition, to being truly seen. You get it. You actually get it. I get it. The band had started playing something slow and romantic, and Cassie watched couples drift onto the dance floor. Even from a distance, she could see Melissa in her husband's arms, looking blissfully happy. The sight made something ache in her chest, but it wasn't entirely painful. It was more complicated than that. Longing mixed with genuine happiness for her friend. Hope mixed with fear. "Can I tell you something really pathetic?" Cassie heard herself saying. "I used to imagine my own wedding when I was a little girl. Not the fancy stuff. Not the flowers or the dress or any of that. I used to imagine the moment when someone would look at me the way Melissa's husband looks at her. Like I was the most important thing in their entire world. Like they couldn't believe their luck that I chose them. That's not pathetic. That's sweet. It's pathetic because I'm 28 and still waiting for that look. Still hoping that maybe, possibly, someone will see me that way someday." James set his glass down and turned to face her fully. His voice was gentle but firm. "You know what I think the real tragedy is? Not that you haven't found that look yet. The tragedy is that you've convinced yourself you don't deserve it." Cassie felt like he'd reached into her chest and grabbed her heart. "I never said that. You didn't have to. It's in everything you've said tonight. You talk about yourself like you're not enough. Like you're some consolation prize that someone might settle for if they can't do better. That's not true." But even as she said it, Cassie knew it was a lie. That was exactly how she felt. That was exactly what her ex had made her feel. "Isn't it?" James challenged. "You said your ex told you that you weren't ambitious enough, and instead of recognizing that he was the one with the problem, you internalized it. You decided he was right. You decided you weren't enough." Cassie opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. He was right. God, he was completely right. And hearing it said out loud made something crack open inside her. She started, her voice shaking. "I just wanted him to love me for who I was, not for who I could become or what I could achieve. Just me. Is that really too much to ask?" "No," James said softly. "That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum of what you deserve. Then why couldn't he give it to me?" The tears were falling freely now, and Cassie didn't even try to stop them. "Why wasn't I enough? Because he's an idiot." James reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, the gesture so tender that it made Cassie's breath catch. Because he was too caught up in his own ego and his own plans to see what was right in front of him. "Because he didn't deserve you, Cassie. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're loyal enough to stand by your best friend even when it hurts. I know you're honest enough to admit when you're struggling. I know you care deeply enough to cry over a relationship that ended, which means you loved deeply. Those are rare qualities." Cassie laughed through her tears. "You're making me sound much better than I am. You didn't see me cry eating ice cream for 3 days straight, while watching rom-coms and cursing all men. That just makes you human." James's hand was still on her face, his thumb still brushing away tears, and Cassie found herself leaning into the touch without thinking. "Listen to me. You are not too much or not enough. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. And someday, someone is going to look at you exactly the way you imagined, and they're going to feel lucky that you chose them. How can you possibly know that? Because I'm looking at you that way right now." The words hung in the air between them, and Cassie felt the world tilt on its axis. She stared at James, at his gray eyes that seemed to see straight through all her defenses, at his handsome face that held nothing but sincerity, and felt something terrifying and wonderful bloom in her chest. "You're just saying that because I'm drunk and emotional and vulnerable. I'm saying it because it's true." James's voice was steady, certain. You walked into this wedding feeling like a failure, but all I see is someone brave enough to show up anyway. Someone real enough to admit when they're hurting. Someone beautiful enough to make me forget every reasonable boundary about talking to drunk bridesmaids at weddings. Cassie let out a shaky laugh. This is crazy. We're crazy. I don't even know your last name. Do you want to? She hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to know everything about this strange, wonderful man who had appeared at exactly the right moment and said exactly the right things. But another part of her was terrified of hoping again, of opening herself up again, of risking another disappointment. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Then we'll just be James and Cassie for tonight. No last names, no expectations, just two people being honest with each other at a wedding. Cassie felt herself nodding before she'd fully decided to agree. Okay, just for tonight. But I reserve the right to pretend this never happened tomorrow when I'm sober and mortified. Deal, James said with a smile. Though I have to say, I hope you don't pretend it never happened. We'll see how I feel when the room stops spinning. They stood there for a moment, the noise of the party fading into background buzz. Cassie was acutely aware of how close James was standing, of the way his hand had dropped from her face, but remained near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. The alcohol was making everything feel slightly surreal, but this connection, felt more real than anything had in months. Can I ask you something? Cassie said, emboldened by champagne and emotion. Why were you over here alone? A guy like you, at a wedding like this, you should be surrounded by people trying to talk to you. A guy like me? You know what I mean. You're obviously wealthy, probably successful, definitely attractive. She said it matter-of-factly, too drunk to be embarrassed. Why are you hiding at the bar talking to a disaster of a bridesmaid instead of networking or whatever it is? Successful people do at these things. James's expression shifted, something guarded entering his eyes. Maybe I'm tired of networking. Maybe I'm tired of conversations where everyone is performing, trying to impress each other, sizing each other up. Maybe I wanted something real for a change. And you found that in my drunk confession session? I found that in your honesty. James leaned against the bar beside her, their shoulders almost touching. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Most people at events like this spend the entire time maintaining their image, saying the right things, being who they think they're supposed to be. You just told me you stole a candy bar when you were 7. That's refreshingly honest. I also told you I might end up alone with 17 cats. That's not refreshingly honest. That's alarming. I think you're being too hard on yourself. I think you're being too nice to me. Cassie turned to look at him, really look at him. In the soft light of the ballroom, he was almost unfairly handsome. Strong jaw, perfectly styled dark hair, those penetrating gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. But it wasn't just his looks. There was something in the way he carried himself, a confidence that came from more than just wealth or success. It was the confidence of someone who knew exactly who they were, even if they were tired of being that person. Can I tell you what I'm really afraid of? She heard herself saying. I'm afraid that I'm going to wake up 5 years from now and realize I've been so busy protecting myself from getting hurt that I've missed out on actually living. I'm afraid that my ex was right, that I'm not ambitious enough, that I'm settling for a mediocre life because I'm too scared to reach for something more. But mostly, I'm afraid that I'll never feel that thing everyone talks about, that certainty that you found the right person. I'm afraid it doesn't exist, and I'm even more afraid that it does exist, but just not for me. James was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching her face. Then he spoke, his voice low and intense. I can't promise you that you'll find certainty. I don't think anyone can. But I can tell you that you're wrong about settling. Knowing what you want, choosing simplicity over complexity, that's not settling. That's wisdom. Your ex was wrong. Ambition without purpose is just noise. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that what you want doesn't look like what everyone else wants. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. James's laugh was quiet, almost sad. I've spent years chasing things I thought would make me happy. I've achieved everything I set out to achieve, and I still wake up some mornings feeling like something's missing. So trust me when I say that knowing what you actually want is a gift, not a failure. What do you want? Cassie asked, genuinely curious. If you could have anything, what would it be? James was quiet for so long that Cassie thought he might not answer. Then, softly, he said, I want to feel like myself again. Not the version of me that everyone expects. Not the successful businessman or the reliable son or the public figure. Just me, the person I was before I learned to perform for everyone. Do you remember who that person was? Sometimes. In moments like this, actually. When I can just be honest, without worrying about how it will be perceived, or what it means for my image. Cassie felt a wave of sympathy wash over her. That sounds exhausting. It is. They fell into a comfortable silence, watching the party continue around them. The band had transitioned to something upbeat, and the dance floor was packed with guests laughing and spinning. Melissa caught Cassie's eye from across the room and waved, her face glowing with happiness. Cassie waved back, and this time the smile felt genuine. Her best friend deserved this joy, deserved this celebration. And Cassie realized she could be happy for Melissa while still acknowledging her own complicated feelings. The two things weren't mutually exclusive. Your friend looks happy, James observed. She is. She really is. And I am happy for her. I just wish I was better at showing it. I think showing up in a dress that makes you look like a lavender cupcake shows a lot of dedication. Cassie burst out laughing. You heard that. I have good ears. God, I really did say that out loud, didn't I? What else did I say that I'm going to regret tomorrow? You said you might end up with 17 cats. You said your neighbor's phone conversations come through the walls. You said you work for a company that makes bathroom fixtures. Oh God, Cassie covered her face with her hands. I'm never drinking again. For what it's worth, I think bathroom fixtures are an underappreciated industry. Cassie peeked at him through her fingers. Are you making fun of me? Never. James gently pulled her hands away from her face. I'm being completely serious. Everyone needs bathroom fixtures. It's a noble profession. You're definitely making fun of me. Maybe a little, but only because you make it easy, and because I like seeing you smile. Cassie felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the alcohol. You're very smooth, James. I bet you do this all the time. Find drunk bridesmaids and say exactly the right thing to make them feel special. I've never done this before, actually. His voice was serious now. I've never had a conversation like this at a wedding. Or anywhere, really. Why not? Because I'm usually too busy being who everyone expects me to be. But something about you, about your honesty, it made me want to be honest too. Made me want to drop the act for a while. Cassie felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with champagne and everything to do with the man standing beside her. This is probably the alcohol talking, but I'm really glad you came over here tonight. I'm glad too, even though I'm a complete mess, especially because you're a complete mess. James's smile was genuine, warm. Perfect is boring. Messy is interesting. That's a generous way of looking at it. It's an honest way of looking at it. He paused, then added, Can I tell you something that might be crossing a line? At this point, I don't think there are any lines left to cross. Go ahead. I find you absolutely fascinating. From the moment you started talking, I couldn't look away. The way you think, the way you feel things so deeply, the way you're simultaneously cynical and hopeful. It's captivating. Cassie's heart was pounding now, and she couldn't blame it entirely on the alcohol. You barely know me. I know enough to know I want to know more. That's a dangerous thing to say to a drunk girl at a wedding. Is it? James stepped closer, and Cassie could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. Because I'm finding it hard to care about danger right now. Cassie looked up at him, her breath catching. We should probably slow down. I'm drunk, and you're being way too perfect. And tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and realize this was all some champagne-induced fantasy. What if it's not? What if it is? Then we'll deal with that tomorrow. But right now, in this moment, does this feel like a fantasy to you? Cassie opened her mouth to say yes, to deflect with humor or self-deprecation, but the words wouldn't come. Because no, this didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt terrifyingly real. The way James was looking at her, the way her heart was racing, the way everything else in the crowded ballroom seemed to fade away until it was just the two of them. It all felt achingly, impossibly real. No, she whispered, it doesn't feel like a fantasy. Good. James reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. Because I'm not fantasizing. I'm right here, and you're right here, and this is real. I don't know how to do this. Cassie felt panic rising alongside the warmth. I don't know how to trust this, how to trust you, how to trust myself. You don't have to figure it all out right now. James's voice was patient, gentle. We can just be here. Just be honest with each other. That's enough, is it? It's more than enough. Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes again, but they were different now. Not tears of sadness or self-pity, but something else. Something that felt like relief, like being seen and accepted exactly as she was. I'm going to regret this tomorrow. I'm going to wake up and realize I told you everything, all my insecurities and fears and weaknesses, and I'm going to be mortified. Or you're going to wake up and realize you were brave, that you were honest, that you took a chance on connecting with someone, even when it scared you. When did you become so wise about feelings? I thought successful businessmen were supposed to be emotionally unavailable. Who said I was a successful businessman? You're wearing a suit that probably costs more than my rent. You have the confidence of someone who's used to being in charge, and you said you spent years achieving things. I can add 2 and 2 together. Fair enough, James smiled, but success doesn't mean I have all the answers. Trust me, I'm figuring this out as I go, just like you. That's oddly comforting. The band started playing something slow and romantic, and James glanced toward the dance floor before looking back at Cassie. Dance with me. What? Dance with me. He held out his hand. You're at a wedding. You should dance at least once. I'm drunk. I'll probably step on your feet. I'll risk it. Cassie stared at his outstretched hand, her heart pounding. This was a turning point. She could make a joke, deflect, go back to the safety of cynicism and self-protection. Or she could take his hand. She could be brave, just for a moment. Just for tonight. Okay, she heard herself saying. But don't say I didn't warn you when I destroy your expensive shoes. They're just shoes. James's smile was brilliant as she placed her hand in his. He led her onto the dance floor, and Cassie was acutely aware of every eye that turned their way. She was sure people were staring, wondering who she was, why she was dancing with this striking, confident man. But when James pulled her close, one hand at her waist and the other holding hers, everything else faded away. For someone who's drunk, you're doing remarkably well, James murmured, his breath warm against her ear. For someone who's dancing with a disaster, you're being remarkably patient. Stop calling yourself a disaster. You're not a disaster. You're just human. Same thing. It's really not. They moved together in silence for a moment, and Cassie let herself relax into his arms. He was a good dancer, confident and sure, guiding her through the steps so smoothly that even her alcohol-fogged coordination could keep up. She rested her head against his chest, heard the steady beat of his heart, and felt something inside her begin to unwind. "This is nice," she admitted softly. "It is. I can't remember the last time someone held me like this, like I was something precious. You are something precious." James's voice was firm, and anyone who made you feel otherwise was wrong. Cassie felt tears threatening again. "You keep saying things like that, and I keep wanting to believe you, but I don't know how. Then let me help you learn." He pulled back slightly to look at her, his gray eyes intense. "I know we just met. I know this is probably crazy, but I haven't felt this connected to someone in years, maybe ever. And I think you feel it too." Cassie's breath caught. "I do feel it, but that terrifies me." "Why? Because what if it's just the champagne? What if tomorrow everything feels different? What if you wake up and realize I'm not actually interesting or fascinating? I'm just drunk and oversharing?" James stopped dancing, his hand still on her waist, holding her steady. "Look at me." Cassie tilted her head up to meet his gaze. "This isn't the champagne. This is real. And tomorrow, when you're sober and mortified, I'm still going to want to know you. I'm still going to think you're fascinating. Because none of this has anything to do with alcohol. It has to do with you being brave enough to be real with me. I wasn't being brave. I was being drunk. Sometimes they're the same thing." He smiled gently. "Sometimes it takes a little liquid courage to let down our walls. But what's behind those walls, that's the real you. That's what I'm responding to, not the champagne." Cassie bit her lip, fighting back tears. "I want to believe you. Then believe me." James cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I'm standing here, in front of you, telling you the truth. I'm not playing games. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm just being honest about what I feel. And what do you feel? I feel like I found something I didn't know I was looking for." James's voice was low, intense. "I feel like I've been going through the motions for so long, playing a role, being what everyone expects. And then you appeared, and suddenly I remember what it feels like to be real. To want something just because I want it, not because it fits into some plan or image. That's a lot of pressure to put on a drunk bridesmaid. It's not pressure, it's honesty. And you can walk away right now. You can laugh this off, go back to your friends, pretend this never happened. I won't chase you. I won't make this weird. But if you're feeling even a fraction of what I'm feeling, then maybe, just maybe, we owe it to ourselves to see where this goes." Cassie felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, wind whipping around her, the ground far below. She could step back, return to safety, to the familiar territory of cynicism and self-protection. Or she could jump. She could trust. She could hope. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." James's gray eyes held hers. "I'm scared too." "You don't look scared. You look like you have everything figured out. I'm excellent at hiding my fear. Years of practice. But inside, I'm terrified. Terrified that you'll walk away. Terrified that I'm not good enough, that I'll disappoint you, that this feeling is too good to be real. You feel that too?" "Of course I do," James laughed softly. "You think confidence is the absence of fear? It's not. It's acting despite the fear. And right now, I'm choosing to be honest with you even though it scares me more than anything has in years." "Why me?" Cassie needed to understand. "Why are you choosing to be vulnerable with me, a stranger, instead of someone you actually know?" "Because strangers are safe, in a way. Because I can be myself with you. in a way I can't with people who know me, who have expectations. And because from the moment you started talking, I felt something click into place, like I'd been looking for this connection without even realizing it. The music swelled around them, and Cassie felt herself swaying slightly, whether from alcohol or emotion she couldn't tell. Other couples moved past them on the dance floor, but she barely noticed. Her entire focus was on James, on his hands at her waist, on his eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses. "I don't know how to do this," she said again, more helplessly this time. "Do what?" "Trust someone new, open myself up again, risk getting hurt again. You don't have to have all the answers tonight." James pulled her closer, resuming their slow dance. "We can take this one moment at a time. Right now, we're just two people dancing at a wedding. That's all we have to be. Just two people dancing. Just two people dancing." Cassie let herself sink into the moment, into the feeling of being held, of being seen, of being valued. The champagne was making everything soft around the edges. But this, James's arms around her, his steady presence, this felt sharp and clear and undeniably real. "Can I tell you something?" she said after a while, her voice muffled against his chest. "Anything. I think I want to be brave. I think I want to jump off the cliff and see what happens. But I don't know if I can. What's stopping you? Fear. History. Self-protection. Take your pick. Those are all valid reasons to be cautious." James's hand moved gently up and down her back, soothing. "But there are also reasons to stay stuck, to never move forward." "I know." Cassie pulled back to look at him. "I know you're right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two very different things. So let yourself feel it." James's voice was gentle but firm. "Stop overthinking. Stop protecting yourself. Just feel what's happening right now. And what's happening right now. Right now, you're in my arms. Right now, we're dancing. Right now, there's something between us that feels rare and real and worth exploring. That's what's happening." Cassie searched his face, looking for any sign of insincerity, any hint that this was a game or a performance. But all she saw was openness, honesty, vulnerability that matched her own. He was taking a risk too. He was being brave too. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay. I'll be brave. I'll jump, but if I crash and burn, I'm blaming you." James laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. "Fair enough. I'll take full responsibility for your emotional devastation. You joke, but I'm serious. I'm fragile right now. Like, very fragile. One wrong move, and I'll shatter into a million pieces. Then I'll be careful." James's expression sobered. "I promise you, Cassie, I'm not going to be careless with your heart. I know what it feels like to be hurt. I know what it feels like to trust someone and have them let you down. I won't do that to you. How can you promise that? You don't even know what tomorrow will bring. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. I can't promise there won't be complications or challenges. But I can promise that I'll be honest with you, that I won't play games or lead you on, that if something changes, I'll tell you." Cassie felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of tension she'd been carrying for weeks, finally beginning to unravel. "That's all I can ask for. Honesty. Respect. Someone who sees me and doesn't try to change me." "I see you," James said softly, "and I don't want to change a single thing. Even the part where I might end up with 17 cats, especially that part. Though maybe we could negotiate down to 12. That seems more manageable." Cassie laughed, and it felt good, felt right, felt like coming home after a long journey. They continued to dance, moving slowly in circles, and Cassie realized she'd stopped counting the minutes, stopped worrying about what came next. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, She was simply present. Simply here, in this moment, with this man who seemed to understand her in ways she didn't fully understand herself. The song ended, and another began, but they didn't stop dancing. Around them, other couples drifted on and off the dance floor, but James and Cassie remained, locked in their own world. Cassie was vaguely aware that people were probably watching, probably wondering, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. For once, she wasn't worried about what anyone else thought. "You're good at this," she murmured. "At what? Making me forget to be afraid. That's because you're already brave. You just needed someone to remind you." Cassie looked up at him, this strange, wonderful man who had appeared at exactly the right moment. The alcohol was beginning to wear off slightly, leaving her thoughts a bit clearer, but no less emotional. If anything, the fading buzz was making everything feel more intense, more real. "James?" she said softly. "Yes? Thank you. For listening. For being kind. For not making me feel crazy or pathetic. You're not crazy or pathetic. You're human. And being human means feeling things deeply, even when it hurts. I wish more people understood that. Most people are too busy protecting themselves to be vulnerable." James's gray eyes held hers. "But vulnerability is where connection happens. You can't have real intimacy without risk. When did you learn that? The hard way. By closing myself off for years, and then realizing I was lonely, even when I was surrounded by people." Cassie felt a surge of empathy. That must have been awful. It was. It is. That's why tonight matters so much. Because this, what we're doing right now, this is real connection. This is what I've been missing. The music shifted to something slightly more upbeat, but they maintained their slow rhythm, unwilling to break the spell. Cassie rested her head against James's chest again, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. Everything about this felt right in a way she couldn't explain and didn't want to analyze. What happens after tonight? She found herself asking. Do we exchange numbers? Make plans? Pretend this never happened? What do you want to happen? I don't know. Cassie was being honest. Part of me wants to see you again. Wants to see if this feeling translates into real life, into sober mornings and normal conversations. But another part of me is terrified. Terrified that it won't live up to tonight. Terrified that I'll be disappointed again. Those are both valid feelings. James's hand traced gentle circles on her back. And I can't make the fear go away. But I can tell you that I want to see you again. Sober. In daylight. In the real world. Not just at a wedding. Really. Really. I want to know what you look like in jeans. I want to know what you eat for breakfast. I want to know what makes you laugh when you're not drunk on champagne. Cassie felt warmth spread through her chest. That sounds nice. Terrifying, but nice. We can take it slow. No pressure. No expectations. Just see what happens. Just see what happens, Cassie repeated, testing the words. Okay. I can do that. Maybe. That's all I'm asking for. Maybe. They danced through 2 more songs, neither of them speaking, both lost in their own thoughts. Cassie's feet were starting to hurt in her heels, and the effects of the champagne were definitely fading, leaving her with the beginnings of what would probably be a spectacular headache tomorrow. But she didn't want this moment to end. Didn't want to step out of this bubble where everything felt possible and nothing hurt. I should probably find Melissa soon, she said reluctantly. Make sure she doesn't think I abandoned her at her own wedding. I'm sure she's been too busy to notice. Still, I'm supposed to be her bridesmaid. I have duties? Or something. James smiled. All right. But before you go, can I ask you something? Sure. Can I have your number? Just in case you decide tomorrow that you do want to see me again." Cassie hesitated, her old instincts of self-protection flaring up. But then she looked at his face, at the genuine hope in his eyes, and felt her resistance crumble. "Okay, but if I text you tomorrow apologizing for everything I said tonight, promise you won't judge me. I promise. Though I hope you don't apologize. I hope you remember how brave you were. I was drunk, not brave. You were both." James pulled out his phone and handed it to her. "Here." Cassie entered her number with slightly shaky fingers, then handed the phone back. "There. Now you have the ability to witness my mortification in real time tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it." "You're strange. You're the one who spent the evening confessing to a stranger at a bar. Fair point." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to walk away. The party continued around them, guests laughing and dancing and celebrating. But Cassie felt like she and James were in their own separate world. A world where honesty mattered more than image, where vulnerability was strength, where two strangers could connect in a way that felt more real than most of her long-term relationships had. "I should go," she said, making no move to actually leave. "You should. But I don't want to. I don't want you to either. This is ridiculous. We just met. Sometimes the best things are ridiculous." James reached out and tucked another strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering. Sometimes you just have to embrace the ridiculous and see where it takes you. Cassie felt herself leaning into his touch, her eyes closing for just a moment. When she opened them again, James was looking at her with such intensity that it took her breath away. Before she could think better of it, before she could talk herself out of it, she rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, just a gentle press of lips, but it sent electricity shooting through her entire body. James's hand came up to cup the back of her head, holding her there for just a moment longer before she pulled away, her heart racing. "Sorry," she breathed. "I probably shouldn't have done that. Definitely crossing some kind of line with the whole drunk kissing thing." "Don't apologize." James's voice was rough, his eyes dark. "Don't ever apologize for that. I don't know what came over me." "I do. The same thing that came over me the moment you started talking. The same thing that's been building between us all night." Cassie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I really should find Melissa now, before I do something else impulsive." "Like what?" "Like kiss you again. Like ask you to leave this wedding with me. Like forget every reason why this is probably a terrible idea." James smiled, but there was something heated in his expression now. Would those be such terrible things? "Yes." "Number?" "I don't know." Cassie pressed her hands to her face, trying to cool her burning cheeks. "God, what am I doing? I don't do this. I don't kiss strangers at weddings. I don't feel this much this quickly. Maybe you should do this more often." "What? Make a fool of myself? Be honest about what you want." James gently pulled her hands away from her face. "There's nothing foolish about that." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's going to wake up tomorrow wondering if any of this was real. It's real." James's voice was firm. "And I'll prove it to you tomorrow when I call. And the day after that. And the day after that, if you'll let me." Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes for what felt like the 100th time that night. "You're being too perfect again. Stop it. I'm not perfect. I'm just honest about what I want. And what I want is to see you again. To take you to dinner. To hear you laugh when you're not drunk. To see if this connection we feel translates into something real. What if it doesn't? Then at least we'll know. But what if it does?" The question hung in the air between them, full of possibility and promise. Cassie wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this feeling was real, that tomorrow wouldn't bring disappointment and regret. But years of being hurt had taught her to be careful, to protect herself, to expect the worst. "I need to go," she said, taking a step back. "I really do need to find Melissa. And I need to think about all of this when I'm sober. I understand." James let her go, but his eyes held hers. "I'll call you tomorrow. Is that okay?" Cassie nodded, not trusting her voice. "And Cassie?" James caught her hand as she turned to leave. "Thank you for tonight, for being real with me. It meant more than you know." She squeezed his hand once, then let go, and walked away, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the music. She didn't look back, afraid that if she did, she'd never leave. She wove through the crowd of dancers, searching for that familiar flash of white, for Melissa's bright smile. She found her friend near the cake table, surrounded by a small group of relatives. Melissa's face lit up when she saw Cassie approaching. "There you are. I thought you'd disappeared. Where have you been?" "Around," Cassie said vaguely. "You know, wedding stuff." "Wedding stuff?" Melissa's eyes narrowed with suspicion and delight. "Or wedding someone? Because I definitely saw you dancing with a certain very attractive man." "Just a friend of the groom's," Cassie said, trying to sound casual. "A friend of the groom's," Melissa repeated slowly. "That's interesting. Because I've been trying to figure out who he was all night. Nobody seems to know him." "What do you mean?" "I mean, several people have asked me who the mysterious handsome guy is, and I have no idea. Neither does my husband." Melissa leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But whoever he is, he looked absolutely smitten with you." Cassie felt heat rise to her face again. "Don't read too much into it. We were just talking." "Talking. Right. And dancing. And staring into each other's eyes like you were the only two people in the room. You're being dramatic. I'm being observant. And I'm also being your best friend, who knows when something important is happening. So spill. Who is he?" "His name is James. And honestly, I don't know much more than that." Cassie felt the weight of her confession settling over her. "We just met tonight. I might have been a little drunk. I definitely said things I probably shouldn't have said. And now I'm terrified and confused, and I don't know what's happening." Melissa's expression softened. "Come here." She pulled Cassie aside, away from the relatives, into a quiet corner near the windows. "Talk to me. What's going on?" "I kissed him," Cassie blurted out. "I barely know him. And I kissed him. And it felt more real than anything has felt in months. And that terrifies me. Because what if it's just the champagne? What if tomorrow I wake up and realize I made a complete fool of myself?" Or, Melissa said gently, what if tomorrow you wake up and realize you were brave? What if this is exactly what you needed? What if it's just another disappointment waiting to happen? "Cassie," Melissa took both her hands, squeezing firmly. "I know Jake hurt you. I know you're scared. But you can't let one bad relationship stop you from taking chances. And from what I saw, that man looked at you like you hung the moon. That's not nothing." "You think so?" "I know so." Melissa smiled. "I've known you since we were 5 years old. I've seen you in every phase of life. And I have never, not once, seen you look at someone the way you looked at him tonight. Really. Really. There was something in your eyes. Something hopeful and alive and real. And I've been so worried about you these past few weeks, seeing you so hurt and closed off. But tonight, even from across the room, I could see something had shifted." Cassie felt tears threatening again. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. Nobody's ever ready." Melissa laughed softly. "You think I was ready to fall in love? To get married? I was terrified. But sometimes, you have to just jump and trust that you'll figure out how to fly on the way down. That's a terrifying metaphor. But it's true. Melissa's eyes were warm, understanding. Look, I'm not saying this guy's your soulmate or your future husband or anything. I'm just saying, maybe it's worth finding out. Maybe it's worth taking a chance on something that makes you feel alive again. When did you become so wise? I got married today. It comes with the territory. Melissa grinned, then sobered. Seriously though, Cass, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone who sees how amazing you are. And if this James person is that guy, then I say go for it. And if he's not, then at least you tried. At least you didn't let fear keep you from something potentially wonderful. Cassie pulled her friend into a tight hug. I love you. Thank you for being perfect. I love you too. And I'm not perfect. I'm just your best friend. Melissa pulled back, smiling. Now, are you going to tell me more about this mysterious James? Because I'm dying here. There's not much to tell. We met at the bar. We talked. We danced. He said he wants to see me again. And I gave him my number, against my better judgment. Your better judgment is overrated. Melissa laughed. Sometimes you need to ignore that voice in your head that tells you to play it safe. That voice has kept me from making a lot of mistakes. It's also kept you from taking chances. There's a difference between being cautious and being closed off. Cassie knew her friend was right. She'd been so focused on protecting herself, on not getting hurt again, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be open to possibility, to hope, to take risks. You're right, she admitted. I've been playing it safe for too long. So what are you going to do about it? I guess I'm going to answer when he calls. And I'm going to try not to overthink it. And I'm going to be brave, even though it terrifies me. That's my girl. Melissa squeezed her hand. And for what it's worth, I have a good feeling about this. Call it bride's intuition. Bride's intuition isn't a thing. It is now. I just invented it. They both laughed, and Cassie felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. Maybe everything would work out. Maybe James would call. Maybe this feeling was real. Or maybe it would all fall apart tomorrow. But at least she would have tried. At least she would have been brave. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Cassie made the rounds, chatting with other guests, helping Melissa with various bridesmaid duties, trying not to scan the crowd for James every 5 minutes. She caught glimpses of him occasionally, always surrounded by people, always looking elegant and confident and completely at ease. Each time their eyes met across the room, her heart did a little flip. Finally, as the night was winding down and guests were beginning to leave, Cassie gathered her things and said her goodbyes to Melissa and her new husband. As she was heading toward the exit, she felt a hand on her arm. Leaving without saying goodbye. She turned to find James standing there, his tie slightly loosened now, his hair a bit mussed, looking somehow even more attractive in his slight dishevelment. I didn't want to interrupt. You looked busy. Never too busy for you. He smiled, and Cassie felt her resolve to play it cool completely crumble. So this is really goodbye then, until you call. If you call. When I call, James corrected. Not if. When. Pretty confident. Not confident. Hopeful. There's a difference. Cassie bit her lip, fighting back a smile. Okay. When you call. Tomorrow. I'll call tomorrow. You don't have to rush. I mean, there are rules about these things, right? Waiting 3 days or whatever. I've never been good at following rules. James stepped closer. Besides, I'm not interested in playing games. I told you I'd call tomorrow, and I will. Okay. Cassie's voice came out breathier than she intended. Tomorrow, then. They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to walk away. The ballroom was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers and staff beginning to clean up. The magic of the evening was fading, replaced by the harsh reality of fluorescent lights and exhaustion. I should go, Cassie said, making no move to leave. You said that earlier, too. I know. I'm not very good at leaving, apparently. I'm not very good at letting you leave. James reached out and took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. But I will call tomorrow. I promise. I believe you. And surprisingly, she did. Good. James lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. Good night, Cassie. Good night, James. She forced herself to turn and walk away, her heart pounding with every step. She didn't look back, afraid that if she did, she'd never make it to the exit. Outside, the cool night air hit her face, clearing away the last of the champagne fog. She stood on the steps of the hotel, breathing deeply, trying to process everything that had just happened. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, expecting a text from her Uber driver, but instead saw a message from an unknown number. I know I said tomorrow, but I couldn't wait. Tonight was extraordinary. Thank you for being so honest, so real, so completely yourself. I can't wait to see you again. James. Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes as she read the message again. And again. A smile spread across her face, and she didn't even try to hide it. She typed back quickly. Tonight was pretty extraordinary, and terrifying, and wonderful. I'm still convinced I'm going to wake up tomorrow and realize this was all a champagne-induced dream. But until then, thank you for making me feel seen. Cassie. His response came almost immediately. It's not a dream. I'll prove it tomorrow. Sleep well. She clutched the phone to her chest, feeling like a teenager with her first crush. Maybe Melissa was right. Maybe it was worth taking a chance. Maybe being brave meant letting herself hope again, even when it scared her. The Uber arrived, and Cassie slid into the back seat, still smiling like an idiot. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Good night? You have no idea, Cassie said, and meant it. The ride home passed in a blur of replaying every conversation, every look, every touch. By the time she reached her apartment, Cassie was exhausted, but wide awake, her mind racing with possibilities and fears in equal measure. She kicked off her heels the moment she was inside, groaning with relief as her aching feet hit the cool hardwood floor. Her apartment was small and cluttered, so different from the elegant ballroom she'd just left. Dishes in the sink, laundry waiting to be folded, her laptop still open on the coffee table from working late the night before. This was her real life, far removed from crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. Would James still be interested when he saw this side of her? When he realized she wasn't some glamorous wedding guest, but just a regular person with a regular life? Cassie shook her head, trying to silence the doubts. She'd promised herself she would be brave. She'd promised Melissa she would take a chance, and she'd promised herself she would stop letting fear make all her decisions. She changed out of her bridesmaid dress, hanging it carefully in the closet, even though she'd probably never wear it again. In comfortable pajamas, she made herself a cup of tea and curled up on her couch, phone in hand. It was late, almost midnight, but she wasn't ready to sleep yet. Too much had happened, too much to process. Her phone buzzed again, another text from James. Are you home safe? Cassie felt warmth spread through her chest. Such a simple question, but it showed he was thinking about her, caring about her well-being. She typed back quickly. Yes, home safe. Just made tea and trying to convince my feet to forgive me for those heels. His response came within seconds. Note to self, future dates should involve comfortable shoes. Future dates. The words made her heart skip. He was already thinking ahead, already planning. Part of her wanted to text back something clever and casual, to protect herself with humor. But she'd been honest with him all night. Why stop now? I'd like that. Future dates, even though the idea terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because what if tonight was just a fluke? What if we don't have anything to talk about when I'm sober? What if the magic doesn't translate into real life? There was a longer pause this time, and Cassie held her breath, wondering if she'd been too honest, too vulnerable. But then her phone buzzed. The magic isn't going anywhere. I felt it the moment you started talking, and I'll feel it tomorrow when I call. But I understand the fear. I'm scared too. Scared that I'll disappoint you. Scared that I won't live up to whatever you're imagining. But we won't know unless we try, right? Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes. When did you get so wise about feelings? I'm not wise. I'm just honest. And maybe a little scared, but mostly hopeful. That makes two of us. They texted back and forth for another hour, the conversation flowing as easily as it had at the wedding. James told her about his childhood, about growing up with expectations and pressure. Cassie told him about her friendship with Melissa, about her job that she didn't love but didn't hate, about her dreams of maybe doing something creative someday, but not knowing what. Around 1 a.m, Cassie finally admitted she needed to sleep. Her head was starting to pound with the beginnings of what would definitely be a hangover, and exhaustion was catching up with her. Good night, James. Thank you for tonight, for everything. Good night, Cassie. Sweet dreams. And remember, I'm calling tomorrow. This isn't over. She fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, a smile on her face despite the headache, despite the exhaustion, despite all the reasons she should be scared. For the first time in months, she felt something like hope. The next morning came too soon, announced by brutal sunlight streaming through her window and a headache that felt like someone was using her skull as a drum. Cassie groaned and pulled the pillow over her head, trying to block out the world. But slowly, memories from the night before started filtering back. The wedding, the champagne, James. Oh God, James. Cassie sat up too quickly, immediately regretting it as the room spun. She grabbed her phone, squinting at the screen. There were several texts from Melissa, asking how she was feeling and demanding details about James, but nothing from James himself, which made sense given it was only 8 a.m. She stumbled to the kitchen, made herself coffee and toast, and tried to piece together exactly what had happened. She'd been drunk. Very drunk. She'd confessed everything to a stranger. She'd danced with him. She'd kissed him. She'd given him her number. And he'd said he would call today. Cassie felt panic rising in her chest. In the cold light of morning, with a pounding headache and no alcohol to soften the edges, everything felt different. More real. More scary. What had she been thinking? She didn't know anything about this man except his first name, and that he was apparently wealthy and connected to the Groom's family somehow. Her phone buzzed, and her heart leaped into her throat. But it was just Melissa. How are you feeling? And more importantly, has Prince Charming called yet? Cassie typed back with shaking fingers. Feeling like death. And no, he hasn't called. It's only 8 a.m. Also, I'm having second thoughts about everything that happened last night. Melissa's response was immediate. Don't you dare back out now. That man looked at you like you were the most fascinating person he'd ever met. Give him a chance. What if it was all just the alcohol talking? What if I made a complete fool of myself? Then you made a fool of yourself. So what? At least you were brave. At least you tried. Cassie set her phone down and buried her face in her hands. Melissa was right. She knew Melissa was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two very different things. The protective walls she'd spent months building were starting to reconstruct themselves, brick by brick, and she didn't know how to stop them. She spent the morning cleaning her apartment, trying to distract herself from obsessively checking her phone. Every time it buzzed with a notification, her heart would skip, only to sink when it was just an email or a social media alert. By noon, she was convinced James had changed his mind, that he'd woken up this morning and realized that talking to a drunk bridesmaid had been a mistake. At 12:47, her phone rang. An unknown number. Cassie stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the answer button. This was it. The moment of truth. She could answer and face whatever came next, or she could let it go to voicemail and hide behind her fear. Be brave, she whispered to herself. Then she answered. Hello? Cassie. His voice was warm, familiar, sending shivers down her spine. How are you feeling this morning? Like I got hit by a truck made of champagne and bad decisions. James laughed. That bad, huh? Pretty bad. But survivable. Cassie found herself relaxing slightly, the sound of his voice easing some of her anxiety. How are you? Better now that I'm talking to you. I was worried you might not answer. I almost didn't. I spent all morning convincing myself that last night was a mistake. And now? Now I'm not sure. Cassie decided to be honest. I'm scared, James. In the light of day, without alcohol to blur the edges, I'm really scared. I know. There was a pause. I'm scared too. You don't sound scared. I've had practice hiding it. But Cassie, listen to me. Last night wasn't a mistake. Everything I said, everything I felt, it was real. And it's still real this morning. If anything, it's more real now because we're both sober, and I still feel the same way. How can you be sure? Because I've been thinking about you since the moment I woke up. Because I'm nervous right now, actually nervous, which never happens to me. Because I want to see you again more than I've wanted anything in a long time. Cassie felt her defenses crumbling. You're being too perfect again. I'm not perfect. I'm just honest. Can I take you to dinner tonight? Tonight? Cassie's heart hammered. That's soon. Too soon. Maybe. Probably. Yes. But also no? Cassie laughed at herself. God, I'm a mess. You're not a mess. You're careful. And that's okay. James's voice was patient, understanding. We can take this as slow as you need. We can start with coffee instead of dinner. Something casual. Low pressure. Coffee sounds less terrifying than dinner. Coffee it is then. How about this afternoon? Say, 3 o'clock? You really don't believe in waiting, do you? I've wasted enough time in my life playing games and following rules that don't matter. When I know what I want, I don't see the point in pretending otherwise. And you want coffee with me? I want coffee with you. And then, if you're comfortable with it, maybe a walk, maybe more conversation, maybe a chance to prove that last night wasn't just alcohol and wedding magic. Cassie took a deep breath. Okay, coffee at 3. Where? There's a place called The Roasted Bean on 5th Street. Do you know it? I do. It's actually one of my favorite places. Perfect. I'll see you there at 3. See you at 3. After they hung up, Cassie stared at her phone in disbelief. She had a coffee date. In 3 hours. With a man who made her feel things she wasn't sure she was ready to feel. She immediately called Melissa. He called, she said, without preamble when her friend answered. I knew it. Melissa's voice was triumphant. Tell me everything. He wants to meet for coffee this afternoon. In 3 hours. And I said yes. And now I'm panicking. Why are you panicking? Because what if we don't have anything to talk about when I'm sober? What if he realizes I'm just a regular person with a boring life? What if the chemistry was just the alcohol? Or, Melissa countered, what if it's even better than last night? What if this is the start of something amazing? You're annoyingly optimistic. I'm your best friend. It's my job. Now go take a shower, put on something that makes you feel confident, and be brave. You can do this. After hanging up with Melissa, Cassie stood in front of her closet for 15 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. Nothing too fancy. This was just coffee. But nothing too casual either. She wanted to look like she'd made an effort. Finally, she settled on jeans and a soft blue sweater that Melissa once said brought out her eyes. She left early, too nervous to sit still in her apartment, and arrived at the Roasted Bean at 2:45. The coffee shop was cozy, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls, the smell of fresh ground coffee beans filling the air. She ordered a latte and found a table by the window, trying to calm her racing heart. At exactly 3 o'clock, James walked through the door and Cassie's breath caught. He looked different in daylight, wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater that matched his eyes, his hair slightly tousled from the wind, but he was still undeniably handsome, still carried himself with that quiet confidence that had drawn her in last night. Their eyes met across the coffee shop, and he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and Cassie felt all her anxiety melt away. Because there it was. That connection, that feeling. It wasn't the alcohol. It wasn't the wedding magic. It was real. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi, you look beautiful. You look different. Good different. Less intimidating than in a suit. Less intimidating is good, I hope." "Very good." Cassie found herself smiling despite her nerves. "So, here we are." "Here we are," James echoed. "Sober, in daylight. Still terrified? Completely. You? Absolutely. But also hopeful." They talked for over 2 hours, conversation flowing as easily as it had at the wedding. James told her about his work, carefully avoiding specifics, but painting a picture of a life filled with pressure and expectations. Cassie told him about her job, designing graphics for bathroom fixture catalogs, expecting him to find it boring, but he seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about her creative process. "I have to confess something," James said during a lull in the conversation. "That sounds ominous. It's not bad. Just, I wasn't entirely honest with you last night about who I am." Cassie felt her stomach drop. "Oh God. You're married, aren't you? Or a criminal? Or married to a criminal?" James laughed. "No, nothing like that. It's just, when you asked if I was related to the groom's family, I said something like that. But the truth is, I'm the groom's brother. His older brother, actually." Cassie stared at him. "You're Melissa's new brother-in-law? Guilty. And before you ask, I didn't mention it last night because I was enjoying being just James. Not the groom's brother, not the successful businessman, not the guy everyone has expectations of. Just me. So everything you told me was true. Everything was true. I just left out one relevant detail about my connection to the wedding." Cassie processed this information. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Honestly. Because the moment you started talking, I realized you had no idea who I was. You weren't performing for me, or trying to impress me, or treating me differently because of my last name. You were just being authentically yourself. And I wanted to be authentically myself, too. Your last name." Cassie felt pieces clicking into place. "Oh God. Your last name is Whitmore, isn't it? You're James Whitmore, of the Whitmore Corporation." Guilty again. James watched her carefully, as if waiting for her reaction. "Does that change things?" Cassie thought about it honestly. "I don't know. It's certainly intimidating. I mean, your family is like really wealthy. Really, really wealthy. The money doesn't change who I am. If anything, it makes it harder to know who I really am. That's why last night mattered so much. You saw me, not my bank account or my last name or my company. I saw a guy who was kind and honest and made me feel less alone. Exactly. That's the real me. The rest is just," James gestured vaguely, "noise." Cassie reached across the table and took his hand. "Okay, I can work with that. No more secrets, though. Deal?" "Deal." No more secrets. They left the coffee shop as it was closing, walking aimlessly through the city streets as the sun began to set. The conversation never lagged, moving from serious topics to silly ones, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Cassie felt herself relaxing more with every step, the fear gradually being replaced by something that felt a lot like happiness. "Can I tell you something?" James said as they paused on a bridge overlooking the river. "Always. Last night, when you told me all your fears and insecurities, when you were so honest about feeling like you weren't enough, it broke my heart a little. Because I saw this incredible woman who was brave and real and so much more than she believed herself to be." Cassie felt tears prick at her eyes. "James, I barely know you, and you barely know me. How can you say things like that? Because sometimes you just know. Sometimes you meet someone and something clicks into place, and all the rules about timing and taking things slow just don't apply." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not saying this is forever. I'm not saying we're soulmates or any of that fairy tale stuff you don't believe in. I'm just saying that what I feel when I'm with you is real and rare and worth exploring. I'm still scared. I know. But are you willing to be scared together? Are you willing to take this chance?" Cassie looked at him, this man who had appeared at the worst possible moment and somehow made everything better. She thought about her ex, about the pain of being told she wasn't enough. She thought about Melissa's advice to be brave. She thought about how tired she was of letting fear make all her decisions. "Yes," she said finally, "I'm willing to take the chance." James's smile was brilliant. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Can I kiss you? Properly this time. Please." He kissed her as the sun set over the river, and it was nothing like the brief, champagne-fueled kiss at the wedding. This was slow and deliberate and full of promise. This was the beginning of something real. When they finally pulled apart, Cassie was breathless and smiling. "So," she said, still in his arms, "what happens now? Now we take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people figuring this out together. I think I can do that. I know you can. Because you're brave, Cassie Morgan. Even when you don't feel like it, you're one of the bravest people I've ever met." They walked back through the city as lights began to twinkle in windows and street lamps flickered on. James insisted on walking her to her door, and they stood in the hallway of her apartment building, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I'll call you tomorrow," James promised. "You better. And the day after that. And the day after that. Don't make promises you can't keep. I always keep my promises." He kissed her forehead gently. "Good night, Cassie." "Good night, James." She watched him walk away, then let herself into her apartment, leaning against the door, with a smile she couldn't suppress. Her phone buzzed immediately with a text from Melissa. "Well, how did it go?" Cassie grinned and typed back, "I think I just jumped off the cliff, and I think I'm going to be okay. That's my brave girl. I'm so proud of you." Cassie set her phone down and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, James was heading home, probably thinking about her the way she was thinking about him. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely unexpected. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the best things in life were the ones you didn't plan for, the ones that showed up when you least expected them and changed everything. She wasn't sure what would happen next. She wasn't sure if this would last a week or a month or forever. But for the first time in a long time, she was willing to find out. She was willing to be vulnerable, to take risks, to hope, and that felt like its own kind of victory. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments on a scale from 0 to 10. What's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.